world consumed by political instability and conflict, the climate crisis has slipped from the headlines.
It's actually very hard. The interest is there for young people to be,
Coming up, some of the planet's youngest climate leaders confront an uncomfortable reality. Has the world stopped listening? What will it take to make people care again?
Whenever I perform, I can see the faces of people light up in the room, and then that way, they say, this is something that everybody needs to take action.
It's a no-holds-barred discussion about power and responsibility.
There aren't just promises and pledges that sound politically comfortable, but they're ethically, economically, practically viable.
From global leaders to the role the media plays in shaping climate narratives.
Are there ethics in news gathering, in news storytelling in 2026?
No, I don't see ethical storytelling, and I don't think that's going to happen.
And perhaps the most uncomfortable question of all.
Are we part of the problem?
I'm going to approach this question very cautiously.
Just 2 degrees is on. Now.
Would you invite fossil fuel companies to the table?
Of course, if they are part of the problem, they also have to be part of the solution.
To what extent do they have influence and power is a different conversation.
Fingers clasp, they break my fall. The firmest grasp moves my hailing spine up tall.
We're seated in a big room with very bright lights. Let's say we're breathing 4 metric tons of CO2 equivalent emissions per hour for this event. We all flew in from different parts of the world on, I won't say private jets, but on commercial airlines. Just for context, 4 metric tons of CO2 equivalent is like one person flying from Istanbul to, say, New York. So there is an irony in us having a discussion about the environment in this setting. I guess my first question would be, and I'll love all of you to answer in however which way you like, although each of you do tremendous work in raising awareness, raising funds, helping people understand how important this issue is, are we part of the problem? Aliza?
I think we're part of the problem, but I'm going to approach this question very cautiously. I think climate change, climate action, all these terms in the climate bucket are very similar to a marathon, right? We can burn out really quickly. Ultimately, the people that can stay long-term in the climate action area find solutions to really global, complex problems are the ones that are most human while doing it. So burnout is normal, and we need to stop treating climate action as a competition of who makes the most moral sacrifice. Sometimes you have to give, sometimes you have to take. That's my answer.
That's a really good response. Leyla, are we part of the problem?
Yes, we definitely are, but that's human nature. We are the part of the problem as much as we are the part of the solution. So us bringing the issues and problems is always leading us to the solutions as well. So as we bring those, we can bring the solutions to the issue as well by, yes, raising awareness. Unfortunately, that's the reality of nowadays, of the 21st century. We have to travel. Yes, we have to use the airplane, but we have to also compensate for that. For example, after a trip, taking a trip, you can build several trees. You can plant those trees in your garden, or there are several campaigns in many countries nowadays. So we do this in Azerbaijan as well. Of course, not constantly, not every time we fly because it's too much, but we try to create solutions to that.
I love that idea of accountability, being aware of your actual emissions and trying to offset it however which way you can. Victory, are we part of the problem?
All right, so a pleasant day to you all. So I'd like to start by saying that the intriguing thing about truth is, although it can be denied, but can never be avoided. And the truth remains that humans today in our contemporary society, we are definitely doing things that are not eco-friendly. And some of the problems we see today are based on our actions and inactions on a daily basis, from those who are cutting down trees, to those who are disposing refuse inappropriately, to those who are not maximizing energy efficiency, to those who are not making use of public transportation that makes it better for our transportation, and the likes. And there are several ways we can definitely take action, but more people need to be aware about the need to protect the planet, to protect the environment for sustainability, because I believe that if we do not take actions, we are still the ones to bear the brunt of it. So we are the problem, and I believe that we definitely need to also empower and raise more awareness, from awareness to responsibility, then to action. So humans, we are the ones causing the problems, and we are the ones to solve the problem.
Can we get a round of applause for honesty, please? Honesty. I mean, honesty has got to be one of the most important attributes of any climate conversation. Let me just start with you again, Victory. You're a poet, you raise awareness using spoken word to move people. But right now, we live in a time of global crisis. Conflicts, the issues surrounding those have spilled over into everyday life to almost everyone on the planet. How do you get your message out when anything you say is overshadowed by fighting in another part of the world?
Poetry is such a powerful medium of communication and storytelling that could definitely spur people to take action and the likes. Because, climate change could be seen as a subject matter or through the scientific reports, data, statistics, and most people are not interested in that. They just think, oh, maybe that's just rocket science. But the truth remains that climate change is everyone's problem. It is not ascribed to either the white or black, the rich or poor, the small or great. It is everyone's problem. So when I discovered the gift of poetry at a very tender age, I knew that poetry is a means for storytelling that could inspire people and get more people aware and to make more people receptive. So if somebody doesn't understand the subject of climate change today, using poetry as a means for storytelling, it could easily make them understand. So whilst there is statistics, whilst there are facts out there on the internet, news headlines in the international space and the likes, and more people are not maybe aware or they are not interested in that subject matter, over time and over the years, I've been able to ensure that I use this medium of storytelling, which is spoken word poetry, to perform on stages, from local stages to global stages, from Lagos, where I come from, to the United Nations General Assembly, to FAO and some of the UN agencies and the likes. And more people are getting interested in the art form. So the way I'm able to do this is to say to myself that if I use spoken word poetry to perform, it has a form of edutainment. Mm-hmm. So it is not just giving out facts. There is a part of entertainment there, and there's also a part of education. So a fusion of it together makes edutainment. Now, I'm able to bring out complex topics and break it down using rhythms, rhymes, sounds, metaphors, imageries, and some of these figures of speech that makes it flowery and makes it human. So I am able to humanize climate change for more people to be aware, from young people to older people and the likes, and more people are getting aware about the subject of climate change, climate education, and sustainability. Whenever I perform, I can see the faces of people light up in the room, and then that way, they say, this is something that everybody needs to take action.
As much as you can humanize the issue, which is a very good point that Victory's made, I think you have to understand where people's interests lie. If we are very self-centered, if we're capitalist-oriented, if profits matter more, speak that conversation with them. That's how you have to angle the conversation. You cannot expect that everyone in the world has the mental capacity and the sympathy the same as that you do. Mm-hmm. So that brings us to the point that climate crisis, it's not a science debate anymore. The science is settled. What we need is three things. Number one, we need will. Number two, we need accountability. And number three, who's in the room when that's being done? Yeah. And we find that often the three entities that are needed, which is frontline communities, young people, and vulnerable nations, that should be in the room to ensure that the climate promises that are delegated aren't just promises that die on paper. There aren't just press conferences. There aren't just promises and pledges that sound politically comfortable, but they're ethically, economically, practically viable. So it's about matching the interest and having those conversations. And it's about, I always say to someone, think about what you would say to the other person if you wanted to speak to them about climate change. Think about it, and then number 2, don't say any of it. What you should do instead is listen. So start the conversation by asking them at a topic that's related to climate change, but relates to their specific sector as well, whether it's finance or investment banking or media or law. And listen and listen and listen, and then find a link. The moment that you start correcting them, the moment that you start showing off your statistics, they switch off. So you need to remember that there is a balance that you need to curate, because the imbalance that exists in the world of the share of countries that are causing climate emissions and cause climate emissions and the share of countries that are suffering, that imbalance is a long journey ahead.
That is a perfectly logical, intellectual perspective. But we're living in this is a camera moving around.
Yeah.
We're living in 2026. Leyla, you know better than anyone, at COP29 in Baku, you were part of this delegation of people trying to get young people interested in climate action. But no offense to the young people today, they post TikToks, they post stories, they go live. These have a place, yes, but how do you get them off their phone for more than 10 seconds to focus on this conversation?
Thank you. It's very hard. It's actually very hard because, you know, the interest is there for young people to be, it's definitely there. It's about the barriers, how to be meaningfully involved. They might be involved, of course, through local actions, through youth communities, and through their government. But the problem is that how meaningful they see that involvement. So, yes, of course, there are people who will never go out of their phones. They'll just be stuck there all the time. It's about the intention and what you want to bring into this world. But there are those who really want to make a change, but they have barriers in their way on how to do that. So for that, they lack the basic understanding of climate change and environmental crisis and the science behind it. So in order to tackle that, we did several campaigns since 2024. We launched the Climate Change Summer Camp for 35, we brought together 75 young educators from 35 countries. And we did that for 2 years in a row, and we hopefully will do that again. This was specifically the program for young educators. Why? Because when we had the consultations with young people and we were asking them the same question, what's stopping you to be involved? Everyone as one said that we just have sometimes no idea what's happening and what is the science of that climate change taking place. So environmental challenges and disaster risks. So altogether combined, we thought that that would be great to bring young educators together and have this component of educating young educators on what is the science behind climate change and why is it happening and how can they go back to their respective communities, to kindergartens, schools, and universities, and teach children and young people on how to tackle climate crisis locally in day-to-day activities. So we did that, and I think that that was an amazing experience for young educators and for them going back to their countries and communities and delivering. So we didn't just end with 75 young educators. It went to thousands of millions of young people across the globe, and we want to continue that initiative.
Very nice. I hope it happens this year.
Hopefully.
But you just hit me in the gut with that comment that people just don't know. How do young people not know what's happening in the world today when it comes to climate change? Okay, that's a stupid question. I know the answer to that question. The news just shows us one thing. The news across the planet shows us one thing. Iran, Israel, the US. Yes, these are important issues, but so is the climate crisis. Antonio Guterres himself said it was the existential crisis of our time. How is climate change dropping from the headlines? Is it dropping from the headlines in Nigeria?
All right. For me, I wouldn't say it's dropping from the headlines, but I just believe that more people need to be aware about it. And
But
that,
how?
That will
How
be
do they
achieved,
become aware?
So that will be achieved by climate education. So climate education should definitely be inculcated maybe into the curriculum. More content creators need to do content around the issue. More people need to be aware about it, because I believe that there has to be that emergence from people who are passionate about it and to the government. But I also know that whilst policies can shape systems, it is ethical storytelling that can shape the people that will definitely build the system. So I believe that it is not just dropping. We need to tell the story. More people need to tell the story, and that starts by climate education, because on a daily basis, as a matter of fact, we are all feeling it, from the rising sea level to the extreme heat wave to the rising temperature to coastal flooding and the likes, to farmers who plant their crops and then everything goes in a single day after every raindrop and the likes. These are issues that even young people going to schools are definitely getting affected by diseases by simply passing through places where they have to dip their legs in the water before they get to school, and several issues like that, and the extreme heat wave that currently strikes that people are experiencing in a place like Lagos, for instance. You can see 30 degrees and the like. These are issues that people are facing every single day. But I just need to say this, that storytelling will definitely bridge that gap through content creators, through many more people who are aware on the basis of climate education, and they are able to raise more awareness. And I believe that climate education is going to do that. So it is not just dropping on the headlines and the likes. It's just that more people need to be aware, and more people need to tell the story through ethical storytelling.
You said it twice now, ethical storytelling. Is there ethical storytelling? Everybody here watch Just 2 Degrees on TRT World. It's ethical storytelling, I'm telling you now. But are there ethics in news gathering, in news storytelling in 2026? Almost every news agency that isn't state-sponsored, even though state-sponsored news agencies have an agenda, private news agencies are sponsored by private companies that dictate, control the flow of information. I just did a story recently about our banks. Did you know that almost every bank uses our funds without us knowing to invest in fossil fuels? How do we get away from news that does not give us what we need to hear? I mean, in London, you know, we always, growing up, I heard about the BBC. It was so ethical. It was full of reporting that was genuine and real and mattered more. Has that changed? Do you see ethical storytelling in today's news organizations?
No, I don't see ethical storytelling in news organizations, and I don't think that's going to happen. And it's because the way that it's designed, it's a business ultimately at the end of the day. So if we don't expect fashion or media or finance to change, why do we expect our news platforms to suddenly change, right? I think it's a bit naive, right, to expect that. But what I will say that are some very sobering facts and figures. At the moment, with the Climate Action Society, we conducted a research with 100,000 young people across 10 countries, and we asked them, how do you feel about the future to do with climate change? 76% of them said, we are frightened by the future. 52% said they believe humanity is doomed. So more than half of the young people are already walking around with grief that they haven't even lived yet. So the mental toll of the climate health crisis exists in all of us. So on one hand, we can say, let's create more education, let's create more stories, but then we're faced with this issue of how do we deal with the mental health toll? And that's not accounting for the fact that there will be physical health effects of climate change. So the malnutrition because of crop failure, because of malaria spread, deaths because of heat strokes, we haven't even accounted for that. So, and it's young generation, it's all three of us, our generation, that are going to be bearing the burden of this. The generation that caused or helped accelerate climate change, they aren't even funding it. But that's a conversation that we know happens. The second point I want to emphasize is on the power of media in the entertainment industry. Let's just deal with it as the entertainment industry. I think a lot of us here are aware and educated on war and conflict in different regions because of Hollywood films and Bollywood films and Lollywood films and documentaries. There is a sheer absence of climate-based stories in Hollywood, Lollywood, Tollywood, whatever you want to talk about, in documentaries. So that is climate denial 101. Let's make it entertainment. Let's make it interesting. Let's make it TikTok worthy. Let's make it Instagram trend. I think we can. Some things, if they need to be executed in a light-hearted manner to deliver a heavy topic, then so be it.
Yeah, I just started looking at a movie with Lawrence Fishburne. It's called Ice Age, I think it's called, on YouTube. And it just starts with the world completely frozen over. But the narrator says, we've neglected the planet for decades and this is what happened. They don't really go into the how slowly this moves. He talks about crises that generally affect the global south. Global north countries have issues like air pollution. We have microplastics now. We still don't know the effects of these things on our bodies, on our brains, on our organs. Moving away from the news, Leyla, I love speaking with you always because you have an insight into the COP process. Young people are losing faith in COPs, in climate summits, in these environmental discussions. We know Greta Thunberg lost faith in them long ago. We don't talk about her much here, but she said, why are all these people flying to a COP conference? Number one. Two, why are there so many fossil fuel companies with so much influence in the COP decision-making process? And she lists a whole other series of things as well. COPs are good. I've seen the good that comes out of COP processes. COP29, great result. There were issues with fossil fuel funding. COP30 in Brazil, same story. COP28 in Dubai, same story. Are we going to see the same story come out of COP31 in Antalya, Turkey, later this year?
Well,
your professional opinion.
Yeah. Why are young people losing interest? I'm asking this question myself. I've been asking this question many times because I've been into Sphere since 2023, and we hosted the COP29 in 2024. Why? Because we were not included, I mean, in general, children and youth, they are not included in the process from the very beginning, from the initial stage. The problem is there. When you include a young person, when the decision is gavelled and everything is written, everything is ready, and you just include that person to hear their opinion and just write it down on some paper, of course it doesn't work. I don't want to be in that conference for next year, for example. Is this the case? But if the case is different, for example, institutionalizing the role of the youth climate champion, which I was first to be assigned with this role, was already a step forward, because the role itself, the youth climate champion, is there to bridge the gap between policymakers and children and youth. So including that person in the presidency team means that there is already an entry point to the policymakers, to this decision that's going to be written at the end. And that young person can help those young voices to be there from the very initial stage, when the drafts are there. Yes, we sometimes lose the faith in the process, but the problem is that we shouldn't. Because if we do lose, then we step back and sit and we just observe. But with observation, nothing changes. Things change when you actually observe, make decisions, and push the process. I truly believe in the power of children and youth and how can they drive the change towards more sustainable and green future, because I've seen that myself. When the NCQG decision was gavelled in Baku, it was very late night, 4 a.m. I think. We were there for the negotiations and the process itself. And I saw that young people did their inputs as well. And there is a young people and children text in the NCQG final decision. But the thing is that we want to see the results. We want to see the next steps. Hopefully at COP31 in Turkey, and it's not only about the 2 weeks of COPs, you know, because there is the whole process. Yes, we gather for 2 weeks for the negotiations, to prove that multilateralism still works, and I truly believe that it does. But we do the process the whole year prior to COP, after COP. So we never rest. We might get rest for 5 days after COP, of course. But before and after, there is a huge amount of work that we do, and we try to push for a change. Yes, it's not easy, but I think it's possible.
All right, I'm going to give each of you 1 minute, because we're going to wrap up soon. President-designate, COP31 President-designate Murad Khurram said he is going to tackle climate finance, loss and damage. It's going to be his priority come November. What advice do you have for him so that what he says will actually happen?
For me, what I'll have to say is that the promises that have been made should definitely be implemented. There has to be a follow-up system and a feedback system with the stakeholders, those who are currently grappling with the effects and those who are facing these issues in those communities. So what I'll have to say about that is...
Would you invite fossil fuel companies to the table?
Would I do what?
Invite fossil fuel companies as part of the conversation.
Of course, if they are part of the problem, they also have to be part of the solution.
Definitely, the fossil fuels companies, they should be at the table because what we have as a challenge, they should give us an option on how to tackle it.
Even though they being at the table is the reason why COPs go over time, because they can't decide on the wording, you would still invite them?
They should feel the pressure.
I think they need to be part of the conversation. They can't not be there. To what extent do they have influence and power is a different conversation.
All right. I wish you guys the best of luck. I'm sure we'll see each other in the future.
Thank you, Reagan. See you around.
Thank you so much.